Welcome back. This is Mike from Digital Offensive, and this is my Path to the OSCP video 2. In this video, we're going to do a boot to root using the VM called Stapler by Got Milk. You can find this on vuln hub. I will also post the link down in the description. And what we have done so far is we have our Kali Linux box set up over here, and just showing that we have the VM running a red stapler or stapler. So prior to the video, just make sure all the networking gear is working and everything's up and going. And then I have the IP address. I ran a net discover, and basically I was able to identify that the stapler is running as 192.168.1.240. So in this video, we will be attacking that asset, trying to gain root access. From the description of Stapler, main objective is to get root, read the root flag. There is a multitude of ways from what I've read to get to root. Let's see which ways we can identify and find the fastest way possible to root. And maybe in later videos we'll come back and explore other methods to gain root on Stapler. Alright, so normally when I start doing some testing, especially in the OSCP, what I do is a lot of the stuff you do is a lot of repetition. So what you want to make sure you do is script as much as possible. So anything that you do a lot, any commands with multiple variables that you need to remember all the variables for, I would add them into shell scripts, Python scripts, whatever you're comfortable in scripting, but start building your scripts down. So if we do an ls here, you can see some of the scripts I have. I created a FTP enumeration script, a general enumeration script, and a web enumeration script. Very simple scripts. Let's take a look at one of these before we start. So basically we just cat the file. I'll make this a little bigger so you guys can see this. And what we see in here is basically we're going to take a variable from the user. So the user is going to type in the script name / script name space the IP address or the range of IPs they would like to scan. The script's going to validate that you have entered a variable at the command line. If you haven't entered a variable at the command line, it's going to error out and give you a message saying, hey, make sure you provide a host for us to actually enumerate. If you provide that host, it will then kick off an nmap scan using some of the built-in script functions of nmap to validate if there's any known vulnerabilities for that FTP client, if FTP is running. So we're going to check for anonymous access. We're going to see if there's a bounce attack. We're going to check for pro FTP, some other FTP vulnerabilities. And basically, we're going to check on port 21 and basically take the variable of the IP address or range you provided above and feed it into nmap. You can easily just copy out this nmap script and basically copy and paste it at the command line, run it, and get the information back that you want. The problem is you're either going to be constantly typing this all out, or you're going to have this saved and copy and paste each time you want to use it. So building these type of scripts will definitely help you long term to speed up your process and add little tools to your toolkit as you start building up your arsenal for pen testing and as you get ready to sit for the OSCP. It'll definitely help you through labs and things like that, and just in life in general as you're doing testing. So with that being said, let's kick off our general enumeration script. So in the general enumeration script, basically all I'm doing is basically I'm running an nmap command to find listing services, the ports, running some scripts against it to see what comes back. Very simplistic. Give me a bit of information to start basing my attacks on. Trying to give me an idea of where I want to look, what I want to dig into. So we're going to do get /generalnum.sh. Hopefully you guys can see this. If I make this a little bit small and drag it up here. Let's try that again. We're going to type in the IP address 192.168.1.240. And we're going to hit enter. Now it's going to take a little while to go out there. It's going to check all the ports. And then it's going to start feeding us information back on the screen. So already you can start seeing that we have some open ports. So it's checking the ports. It's still building that list, running some more checks in the background. So let's give this a few seconds to run. And while this is running, we'll come back to this in a second. Alright, so that script finally completed. One of the things you want to take into consideration too, as you're mapping an environment and you're running through a multitude of different tests and checks, you want to watch the load you're putting on the environment. In your labs, in your testing at home, things you're doing there, you may not be too worried about it. But when you start working at a customer site and you're creating large scans and a lot of load on their network, it's going to become noticed. And they're either going to catch you right away if you're trying to be secretive, or you're basically trying to do a red team engagement where they don't know you're there. Or you may cause some network capacity issues, especially going over slow links or running a multitude of tests against fragile hosts or assets that may not be able to take that type of bandwidth that you're putting at it. So as you start learning, as you start going through some methodologies, you start tweaking things, you may want to look at what your Nmap script is really doing and what you really need from that. Can you run a base Nmap script and get some of the simple data back first? Once you get that simple data, then maybe enumerate deeper on those services itself instead of running a Hail Mary, basically like a Hail Mary against it and getting all this data back at once. Because even though we have all this data, it did take a while. I posted a video for maybe about 2-3 minutes, and that's for one host. Now multiply that across hundreds of hosts depending on your engagement, and you're looking at a large amount of data being sent out. So you see that we got a lot of data back from this. Let's see some of the interesting things we're seeing here. Excuse me, I am battling a cold. I woke up this morning. Okay. So, as far as open ports, we're seeing port 21 open. We're seeing a NetBIOS port 139 open. I'm assuming NetBIOS, right? We're going to dig deeper into these things. We see 3306 open, which is most likely MySQL. Port 22 open, which is SSH, 80, HTTP, 53 DNS, so on and so forth, right? Basically, guys, if you're sitting here and you're watching these videos, you probably already have a clue what most of these ports are and what they do. Just look at the ports, you can almost quickly identify this as possible Linux machine, right? A lot of common ports to Linux, not really screaming Windows at me right away. So we start looking through the list of some other information, what else came back to us through our scripts. And as we start to get through, we start looking at some of the stuff around FTP. All right, so nothing came back for the bounce. But we know FTP is running, so maybe we'll dig deeper in with our enumeration script that we have for FTP. We come down here a little bit. Actually, look, we could find that anonymous FTP is allowed. So we can basically log into this FTP server using the user anonymous and any password. And maybe there's something in that will give us some hint about where to go next, what we got to do to this server. Do we have read and write access to that? What type of access do we have? We can't do a directory listing in Nmap, so maybe there's a problem there, but it's something that we'll put into our notes to come back and check. One of the things I like to use for note-taking as I go through these is I go... So one of these things I like to use for note-taking is Keep Note. Keep Note comes on Kali. I found it very helpful during my OSCP to track my notes in here. There's a lot of other tools that people may use. You can keep it as simple as using OneNote or Notepad or whatever works for you. I found this to be pretty helpful. The one thing I would say the downside with Keep Note I noticed was as you start adding a lot more data into here, it became very slow, sometimes crashed. So I found myself constantly saving to avoid losing any data. So what do we want to do here? We're going to do a new notebook. I'm going to call this Stapler since the VM we're using. Save it in my desktop for now. Alright, so we have our notebook. We're going to create a new page. It's going to be 192.168, 192.40. Now, how you track your data here, that's up to you. I like to have the IP address and have data under it. So I notice the IP we're doing, and sometimes I'll break it out to individual port-based versus service-based versus exploit or whatever data. If I'm collecting credentials, things like that, I'll create additional tabs under here. to put my notes in those sections. But for this, we could keep it pretty simple. So we have our new page. We're going to come down here. So we know anonymous FTP is open. So that's just a note I want to take down. Make sure I remember to come back and check that out later. What I usually will do too is I'll take a screenshot, or I'll always copy and paste all the open ports. So port-wise, we saw a bunch of stuff there. So let's go back to that for a second and grab some of these ports. So we know some other ports we want to come back and look at. So we're going to copy this. I'm trying to get used to my new Mac, so I'm not using all the shortcuts. So don't worry about that as I'm going through this. And we want to keep note. So I'm going to paste my other ports down here. Okay. So some of the other ports we see, as I say, we saw 80 to 50. Here's an odd port. We're seeing port 12380, and we're seeing 666. So two odd ports. Definitely something we probably want to check out, see what they are, what they're running. All right, let's go back to our enumeration, see what else we're seeing. So in our enumeration, we're going to minimize this guy. Be nice to have two windows, but all right, we'll go over here. All right, so we got through our FTP bounds and other information. So we're just going to scroll through here, see what else we're seeing. So here's where we found out about the anonymous listings. And if you notice too, a lot of those other enumeration scripts I created basically are subsets of this general enumeration. So a lot of the other stuff I wrote will basically get the information that I'm getting in here, right? But in a smaller subset, making it a little bit more manageable than parsing through all this. So we're seeing OpenSSH is running. We have our version of OpenSSH. It looks like possibly Ubuntu Linux. We're seeing some information around the host keys. So keep that in mind. And let's see, here we have information about our DNS server. So I'm making notes of these, keeping them in my mind, what I want to do, come back to these, revisit them. I'm seeing that port 80 is open. We're seeing some supported methods for it. So we know there's a web server running. Looks like PHP CLI server 5.5 or later. So we may want to come back to that, see if there's a vulnerability for that type of server. Right. We're getting some information coming back from NetBIOS off that port 139. Information coming back from the Doom port, which was the 666. We're getting some of the data from MySQL coming back to us. Version, so great. So, not seeing anything's jumping at me right there, right now. I could be wrong. But it's definitely a vector I'll come back and look at. I'm looking for some of the smoking guns, things that are going to jump out at me right away. I'm seeing here that Apache is running on a non-standard port. That's where our 2380 was above. Looks like it says site doesn't have a title, service unrecognized despite returning data. So we definitely want to check out this port, service in our browser, see what's listening there. And if the application that's sitting there might be vulnerable as well. All right, what else do we have in here? Anything else useful? Looks like on the SMB, we got some information that came back on that. Looks like guest user, so possibly some basic reading without authentication there. Let's see if we get down further. We have anything. So there's definitely some stuff around enumeration of the SMB that might be worth checking out a little bit further. So knowing that, let's take a look at the SMB real fast. If we do SMB enum, so basically just running the mmap scripts, some additional checks against that service, see what's there. All right, so the script finished, and let's take a look at it. Okay, so we got a bunch of information that came back to us. Let's start from the top here and work our way down. All right. Okay, so it looks like there's a shares. So we're checking some of the shares. Interesting. There's a user called Kathy. And on that, Fred, what are we doing here? Interesting. Let's see what else we got down here. So let's see. The Kathy share, there's some folders in there that we can see. So this can give us some information that we can dig into. So I'm going to make a note of this. Now, Keep Note allows for screenshots as well. I like to have the data because then I can copy and paste for quicker reference. For proof, I'll usually take a screenshot. So I have that data. All right. So we got some information that we can start checking. So let's take a look at the FTP first. So we know anonymous FTP is open, right? So let's take a look at that. So FTP, we're going to type in FTP 192.168.1.240 is this host, right? It says, Harry, make sure to update the banner when you get a chance to show who has access here. Very interesting. So we know there's an employee in the company named Harry. So we may want to take note of that as a possible user that we're going to look at trying to attack. So let's try to log in. We're going to type in anonymous. We're going to type in a random password, whatever you want. And we're logged in. So we can see that we can log in as an anonymous user. So let's see if there's anything interesting here. So we do our ls. We see that's in the directory. There's a file called note. Well, I don't see anything else. Can we download note? Let's try to get a copy of notes, read it, what it is. Get note. So we're able to download it. So let's open up note. So ls, let's do cat note. Note, Ellie, make sure you update the payload information. Leave it in your FTP account once you are done, John. So right now we have suspicion to believe that there is at least 3 users identified from our FTP, at least 1 user identified from our SMB enumeration named Kathy. So there's about 4 users that we have that we can start looking at. Are they using secure accounts or anything like that? So at this point, I'm going to create a user list. I'm going to put these names in there so I can look at using them for password cracking or other attacks later on in this video. So I'm going to do a VI users. Yeah, that's fine. User. And in here, I'm going to put Ellie. I'm going to put Harry. I'm going to put all lowercase. I'm going to do Kathy and John. Right? The other thing I noticed too here, it says, Ellie, make sure you update your payload information. Leave it in your FTP account once you're done, John. So John is also a very well-known password cracker, John the Ripper. So I don't know, maybe they're trying to say, hey, hint, here's an idea. Maybe use Ellie with John the Ripper, see if you can figure out her account. But really to do that, we would need a password file to try crack in the first place. But there's other tools we can use out there, such as Hydra, to try to figure out how to try to see if we can brute force any of these user accounts. So what I like to do for my password list is I usually use the basic, the Rocky U10 built in with Kali, or any of those password lists that are built into Kali. And I'll usually take the usernames and I'll invert the usernames. And by inverting the username, sometimes if someone's that weak of a password, they'll change their name backwards and use that. Knowing these type of scenarios, these labs, that's usually a good place to start. even using like the password, things like that. The other thing that kind of makes me wonder here is, Ellie, make sure you update the payload information. Leave it in your FTP account once you're done. So far, this company doesn't seem too secure. They're leaving a lot of stuff open, changing default banners to remind each other to update things at a later point in time. Definitely not practicing a lot of good security practices. So there's a good chance here that we may be able to crack one of these accounts. So what we're going to do is I'm going to start up Hydra, and we're going to let Hydra run and see if we can find a account. Okay, so before I actually kick off Hydra, what I want to do is let's check out RockU. So I'm going to go to VI RockU, and you can see already I added in here Ellie's name, and I added Ellie's name backwards. So let's also add in here John and Harry as well. And I believe John and Harry may be common names already in this password cracker text. So we'll add them in here just in case, right? All right, so we're going to save that. Now we're going to kick off our password cracking, right? So we're going to use Hydra. It's a password cracking tool. So Hydra capital L. So the capital letters, when you're given the variables here, is telling you to use a text file or a file with the user's names in it, versus using a lowercase l, which will tell me just use that one user account. Same thing for password. So we're using a password file. We're going to do a verbose output so we can see the information come back to our screen, and we're going to attack the service FTP. So I'm going to kick this off. This is going to go through several attempts. So as this is going through the attempts, I'm going to pause the video for a moment. All right, so according to Hydra, it says 1 of 1 target successfully completed, 1 valid password found. So we were able to find a valid password for the user. So let's see what user we were able to find it for and what the password was. And it looks like the username password combination we found was for Ellie, with her name basically spelled backwards. So we're going to take a note of this. We're going to put this into our keep note to be able to be used. All right. So knowing that, let's actually try to log in as Ellie and see what good information we can find, right? So we're going to exit out the FTP server. Let's minimize this window so we have some room. Okay. So we're going to FTP back to that server. And here we're going to log in as Ellie. And we're going to do YLLE. And we're able to log in. Awesome. So we know Ellie's account works. So let's see what Ellie has access to. This is interesting. It almost looks like Ellie's home directory is mapped to the Etsy directory. Very interesting here. So let's see what interesting files we can actually access here. So most likely we're not going to be able to download the shadow files because we don't have the right level of access most likely. But let's see what other stuff is in here. Let's release. Let's try to grab the password file. So we were able to download that. Interesting. We'll come back into FTP in a second. So cat passwd. Holy smokes. So this box looks like it has a bunch of users running on it. Most of them have shells, meaning that there are accounts on the box that we can possibly look at brute forcing our way in. So let's take this list. We're going to parse this list to basically just get all the users' names out of it. And then we're going to run that list again through Hydra against SSH and see if it works. But before we do that, let's actually just see if Ellie's account works. We already have a password. Maybe the FTP server that's running is allowing Linux user account authentication, which then would allow me to log into her account via SSH. So let's just check that out to make sure. So we want to accept the fingerprint. And here we're going to type in YLLE, enter. Doesn't work. Let's try it one more time, just in case I fat fingered it. Never knew. Enter it in, and doesn't work. All right, so doesn't look like Ellie's account allows us to use that password for our FTP into her SSH. Maybe kudos for the company for separating the two and avoiding us from being able to simply jump in that way. But let's see what else we can do, right? We have all those user accounts. Maybe not everyone is as secure as Ellie, or is Ellie really secure? Either way, let's check it out. So we're going to kill this, and we're going to parse that password list. So we have that password list here, right? We have all this data in here, and all we really want is that first column. We just want those usernames. And we're going to create another user list using those usernames that we're going to feed back into Hydra again, and basically try to brute force from there, okay? So let's give that a shot. All right, so we're going to use the command cat password. So we're going to cat the password file, we're going to pipe it through grit, remove anything that has /false, meaning that it doesn't have a shell that for people to log into. Then we're going to pipe it back over to grep again, remove anything that has no login. And then basically pipe it over again, remove anything with the $, and then basically cut the first column. Using the delimiter. And basically, when we do that, we should have a copy of our users and then output them into our users.shell file. So I'm going to call it users.shell as our file. So we'll enter this command, and now if we do cat users.shell, we can see that we have all those usernames, right? Excellent. So now we basically want to run those usernames again against SSH. And what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to run it using the user list and using the user list for the users as well as the passwords. We saw how Ellie basically was Ellie with the name spelled backwards. Let's see if anyone, for a quick check, is using their first name, using the user ID as their password as well. If that doesn't work, I will then run it back through one of the other password lists to see if we can crack anything that way. I'm figuring for how insecure they are, we want to keep it simple. We can do it that way, just for the first one. Okay, so here we have the Hydra's help file, and I want to point something out before we go into actually running Hydra, so you guys can understand the commands I'm about to run. So in the command I'm about to run, you're going to see -e nsr, right? So the -e nsr, so the N stands for null password, the S is for the login as password, login as password, so basically login name as the password, N or R. So R is basically for the reverse login, so it's going to take their name like we did for Ellie and swap it without you actually having to specify that as a variable. So the last command I ran, I could have actually just did that as well and saved some time, but it was simple. We just quickly added it to the file. So we're going to use that, and we're also going to use a nullify here too, because what I notice when I try to brute force SSH, sometimes I get a lot of connections and issues, a lot of drops. I don't know if I'm overloading the process, but yeah, I'm not sure if we're overloading the process in the VMs or not. But what we're going to use is the -t here, and basically we're going to set a time. Sorry, not a time, but how many threads we're going to do. So I'm going to limit the threads down to anywhere 3 to 4. There shouldn't be too many attempts against it, and we'll run it that way. All right, so let's put the command down that we're going to use. Okay, so we have Hydra-L. We're going to use that users.shell file that we created, basically where we dumped all the usernames out of the password file and created a user list that we're going to use for trying to brute force against. We're going to use that ENSR, like I said. So we're basically null sessions, same password as login, and basically switching the login name around and using that as the password as well. We're limiting our threads to 4, and we're going to attack SSH and against our host here. So we're going to hit enter, let this run. This may take some time, so I'm going to pause the video here for a moment. All right, so as you can see, so far we've got at least one password found for the user Shazlet, or S. Hazlet, however you want to pronounce that. and using the same password. As I said, a lot of these vulnerable distros you're going to find out there, they're going to have some very simplistic areas, and they're going to have some very advanced areas. They'll basically have you struggling for days, right? So right now in this video, first attempt at this, looking for the simplest methods, walking through the process. A lot of thoughts bouncing in my head and trying to jot them down for you guys too as we go through. But so far we've gone from a anonymous FTP with no user level access, really just basically logging an FTP server, see what's there. We don't have a standard user yet. That gave us basically some information to start looking at possible attacks, maybe against Ellie. So using that, we were able to quickly brute force Ellie's FTP, and once we're in Ellie's FTP, some admin definitely totally messed up that server. There should be no way that Etsy is mapped over to Ellie. Ellie should not have access to all those files as her home directory. So with that being said, we were able to quickly go through, find some files that may be helpful. There's probably other files in there that may be of interest as well. And we can use that in our post-recon, or if this attack doesn't work, we can go back and look at it again. But right now, using that password file we were able to download, we were able to brute force this user account. So now we at least have shell access to this box. So now that we have shell access to the box, let's actually try to log into the box and see what we can see. So we're going to do SSH. I'm going to copy this username at 192.168.1.240. I'm going to enter and see what happens. Interesting. So just like on the FTP server, they decided, hey, why don't we tell someone to do their job by putting into the banner, the message. Barry, don't forget to put a message here. So now we know there's a user Barry. We know there's a user Kathy. We know there's at least all those other users, right? So we have that big long list of users. So I'm not even going to go further with that. But we have a lot of users we can be looking at to see what their permissions are, what their roles are, if this user doesn't work out for us. So before this times out, let me paste in the password here again. We hit enter, and it timed out on me. So let's do that again. All right, welcome back. So we're logged in now. Excellent. So what does she have access to? All right, so nothing's in my home directory. Let's see what type of operating system this is, what we're running, right? So I'm pretty certain at this point in time we're running some type of Linux. So let's do a uname -a. And we're seeing that it is a Linux box running kernel 4.4.0. Looks like it's Ubuntu. So is there any vulnerabilities for that, right? That'd be the simplest route up there. Basically find a local kernel exploit for user level access to root. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Game's over, right? So let's see what we can find out there. So several ways we could do this. We could go out to Google. We could go to ExploitDB, which is one of my favorite sites to find exploits. But there's also tools locally installed on your Kali box called Searchsploit that we can try as well. Now, I'm not very versed in Searchsploit. I usually go out to ExploitDB, check it out, find out, read the code, make sure it's not going to do anything malicious, and then compile and try it out in my VMs before using it in production. Searchsploit usually allows you quick access. It comes with a lot of the default exploits, so you can copy them over quickly, compile them. So, helps if I type Searchsploit right. Okay, so Searchsploit 4.4.0. Okay, let's see what we got in here. So this one looks like it's Windows local, so that looks like it's a Windows one. That one says iOS. This one looks like it's a web application. So here's several Linux ones we have here. And all right, so we could try some of these out. We'll dig into those in a moment and see what they are, how they work. I don't want any of the DOS ones. That doesn't interest me. We want access. We don't want to take down the box. One of the other things I found useful too is there's several scripts out there that'll help you with enumeration or post exploitation of the box. So let's bring that up real fast. We'll jump over to my browser here, and I have them up on the screen. So I found this little simple PHP script, which is really nice. Basically, it'll check the local box for exploits. So it's a little simple PHP script, and you can see actually it almost tells us exactly what we have to do based on our kernel version. So basically, when I first found that kernel version, I ran over to Google, typed it in, and this came up. But I wanted to show you a search exploit as well. Search exploit, I mean, as well. So as you see, this works here as well, and this is telling us, I can download and run this, but it's telling us that we can basically use exploit 39772 found on exploit.db to possibly exploit this vulnerability without me even having to download the tool to check. So I want to copy that for a moment, but I'm not going to run that yet. I want to bring you over to NetSec site. NetSec is Chris Gates, another well-known person within the security industry, and on his website he has some great tools for Linux privilege escalation, or links to the tools I should say, that you can download and run. One of the tools I found very useful during some of my testing has been this Linux priv checker. This is a Python script you can download. It'll basically list out all the processes, libraries, anything of interest that you basically would do in a Linux enumeration. It would basically do for you automatically, and it dumps out tons of information to the screen. And what we can do is we can actually run it too in the video, see if we can find any information. I'm pretty certain, based on the VM, the information so far, that 39772 exploit probably will work. But let's definitely dig deeper, right? Let's see what other information we're finding. We don't want to just jump to a conclusion, especially if it doesn't work, right? So I want to click on this link, copy this. So we can click back here to our VM. We're on the host, right? So we're going to do a double get. We want to download the script and download the script, right? So we saved the script locally. So we have it here. We're going to do a chimp mode of the script. I always just run 777, make it simple for me. All right, so okay, so you can see it's going to go through the enumeration process. You're going to find areas where it's not going to work, and that's because we don't have root access already. So it doesn't have the ability to access those files. But you can see it starts parsing out tons of data for you. Interesting, real writable directories for users other than root. So anyone can write there. To this directory, blog, WP content uploads. So to me that means there's also probably a WordPress site somewhere on here that we can look into. So blog, okay, a blog site. But what gives this away to me is the WP-content. To me, that is a common path within WordPress. So somewhere on this website, there is a WordPress website running. So we can make a note of that over here. I'm not sure if it's the 480 or maybe the 12380. Possible WordPress site. And something we'll come back to later, right? If we can't get in the path we're going right now. So you can see this starts dumping tons and nothing really jumping at me for the password. That's kind of common seeing that in there. Okay. I'm going quickly through this because I want to be able to jump down to the bottom and show you what I'm talking about, where it actually shows you the possible exploitations for privilege escalations. But definitely take some time, understand the script, read through it. If the simple stuff doesn't work, this can be your lifesaver. You can probably come back to here and find something within the script that's going to tell you, hey, you're missing this. Maybe you should go back and double check this. Okay, so the script completed, and the area I'm looking for is down here. Finding relevant privilege escalation vulnerability exploits, right? So it tells you a little note, right? Tells you to try to test them all out. If one doesn't work, try another one. In here, we're seeing some stuff around kernel, IA32 syscalls. We're seeing send page local privilege escalations, and some other items within here. So basically, we can start looking through all these files as well. If we're not finding one that's working for us, we can go out to follow these links on here. out to exploit DB and find the vulnerable. What we'll do here is we'll actually download this and test it as well, just so you can see what would happen. So we're going to do click here. We're going to do copy this link, copy link address, and we're going to download it back to our VM here, to our vulnerable host. So we download that, we unzip this, and now we have these files on our vulnerable host. So we're going to cd into our PHP kernel directory, paste in PHP kernel, PHP-f kernel exploit, hit enter, and basically it's going to come back here and tell us. So we see the double FD put again here, and we see double down here as well. We can't really read it. But that one's a DOS one, that one's a local one. This one's telling me that it matches better with possibly 39722. I'm going to right click here, open link, and see what this is about. So this brings us over to exploit DB. Great area to go research vulnerabilities, find code. Make sure that if you're using stuff in a public database like this, that it's either on a test system or that you know what the code's doing so you don't damage any of your clients. So we can read through the description what it does, how it works, some of the sample code about it. So most of the time when you get to exploit DB, you're going to be able to download the C code and compile it, or download something and compile it. This is definitely not C code, it's not Python. So let's read through it some more and see how we use this code. Alright. So it says an exploit that puts all together is in exploit.tar. So it looks like we need to download something and compile it. So basically we're going to download the exploit, run compile.sh, then execute double put to get our root access if it works, right? So right now we identified our kernel, we identified a possible exploit for that kernel. We're going to see if we can actually download this code and compile it. A lot of times when you're compiling code on a victim, you may not have all the libraries, you may not have compilers to use. You may run into countless other problems, but let's see what we can do. Okay, so we've downloaded the exploit 39772, which should basically be a local kernel exploit. And what we need to do with this, based on what the directory says, we have to extract this. So we're going to unzip the file 39772. Is it? And we'll cd into 39772. Okay, so we got two more tar files in here. So extract the tar files here. And let's just extract the low in case we need it. It doesn't seem like we need it based on the directions, but let's make sure that we're able to access it just in case, right? Takes us a few extra moments, and maybe even longer if I can't type right. All right. So now we got two folders created. According to the directions, we want that exploit folder. So we're going to go cd into eb exploit. And in here we see our compile.sh, like it told us there was going to be a compile.sh. We got a couple of warnings, but no errors, so that's good. Let's see. It looks like it actually did compile. I created double put hello and sudo helper. Now, according to the directions, we just need to run double put now. And looks like it's taking a little bit of time. It says starting right. Woohoo, got pointer reuse. Return successfully. If this worked, you'll have a root shell in less than or equal to 60 seconds. So let's give that a moment. Now, according to this, it says we have root privileges now. Root at red. We do an ID and also the little hash. But if we do an ID, user ID is root. Our group is root. Group is root. User ID is root. Our GID root. All right, so we're root. So basically, as root, we should be able to do a cd/root. And we have our flag, right? So cat flag. And woohoo, we got root. And we got our flag. So in theory, this box is now done, right? We were able to go from a nonce FTP all the way to root. We did some enumeration along the way. We definitely saw some areas that we can come back and look at further. We saw that possible web server running on 80, a web server possibly running on 12380, possibly WordPress is running not only from our Linux perf checker, but also here it looks like there's a fix for it. Possibly something's broken. We have a WordPress SQL file. We can do a little enumeration here, see what else we got. Actually, it looks like this is the SQL file that would actually have passwords in it. So these are the WordPress users. We see Scott and his password, Tim his password. So we could possibly use this list to brute force access to their WordPress site. Let's see what else is in here. There's a python.sh, which is interesting. So it looks like this starts a simple HTTP server on port 8888. So not sure the purpose of that. Is there anything running as cron that would kick that off? Doesn't look like root has a cron defined. What else do we have in here? LS, right? Cat fix. So it looks like there's some things about building the database and everything for WordPress. But basically at this point we have root. From here we can look at creating our ability to come back, build our persistence, do further enumeration of the machine, see what other vulnerabilities there are. I'm going to leave some of that for other videos. But at least from this video, you got some ideas of other vectors to look at. I would definitely suggest going and checking out port 12380. And actually, let's do that real quick while we're here in this video, just to see what's there. All right, so it says coming soon. Sorry, guys, B-side happened too quick. Didn't have enough time to finish this website. Try again next year. You know, there's definitely a web server running. Let's just jump over to the web server root to see what else there is. So we see a folder called HTTPS. And in that folder we have blog, it looks like. Yeah, blog, which is basically what we saw earlier for that WordPress site. We have a robots.txt that's denying access to admin and blog. So what is admin? Can we access admin? Well, let's see the admin. So it looks like there's some JavaScript running in here. Looks like someone stuck a beef hook in it. So possibly using beef to come back and look at this. There's some other tools. But some thoughts. I'm not sure if he actually finished it or not, but I would definitely play around with this a little bit more, maybe in a future video. See what else I can find inside of the web directory. I would suggest looking through the log files, the mail spools, things like that. Now that you have root, creating yourself an account that you can come back to, putting yourself in sudos, create a scheduled task to give you a shell that comes back to you. Whatever you want to do on this box, but the main objective of this box has been completed. We were able to basically go from boot to root on this box on Stapler. Knowing that Got built this one, there's probably other stuff in here to look at. And other information to use for enumeration to dig deeper, and maybe it'll help in future versions of his code. Alright, if you like this video, subscribe. I'm going to continue my path forward, attacking other boot to roots. There's about 9 others on that list. If you missed that list, check out my first video. I'll put the link in this video as well to that website with the list of vuln hub VMs I'm going through for re-prep for the OSCP. Remember, I set the OSCP a few months back, missed by a few points. A lot has changed in my life between then. I had a lot of time off that I was doing stuff for family and things like that. So I'm trying to refocus my efforts, get my mindset back in the game, refresh my skills, and go through some of these free VMs before I pay out the money again to reset the labs to take the test. So follow along, ask questions, post comments down below, like the video, subscribe to the page, things like that. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.